weightlessness, weightlessness. Oh my God. Oh, wow. Oh my goodness me. No description can equal this. I can't believe this. Weightlessness. Oh, I'm telling you. I can't believe this. Weightlessness. I can't believe this. No description can equal this. Weightlessness. Oh my goodness me.
God.
Oh, Jesus. No description can equal this.
This is nuts!
Oh, my God. Oh, wow. Oh, I'm telling you.
Holy hell.
Oh, my goodness me.
God. This is nuts!
Oh, wow. I can't believe this.
All right, all right, all right.
do you guys think? Yeah, okay, let's go ahead and drop it. All right, hey, welcome young Turks. Look at this. Bridget Todd, Jake Huber, John Idarola. Woo! Hell of a show for you guys today. Later in the program, Texas does a couple things. One is they are trying to make money off of kids who have been left behind. We'll get to that soon. Secondly, they're now debating whether they should teach that the Holocaust was a good thing. It's an actual conversation that happened. So insanity all across the country.
Why are you canceling perspectives?
Yes.
Leftist over here.
Yes, I'm proud leftist and proudly here to cancel the Holocaust was a good thing perspective. Yes, right wingers accusing me constantly of demonizing them. We're going to talk about that a little bit later with Tucker Carlson's stupid attack against Pete Buttigieg. Don't make us defend Pete Buttigieg. Okay, so lots to get to. So, John, take it away.
Okay, we're going right into it. Let's do it. Congress is in the middle of, at least to some extent, continuing to negotiate for the infrastructure bill. The reconciliation one, the big human infrastructure bill that could massively impact your life, the life of your families, millions of Americans. It is incredibly important. And so, if you're Anderson Cooper and you have Bernie Sanders on, a guy who's championed many of the things included in this, of course you're gonna want to ask him about this. Maybe at some point, if there's time. But first, Andrew McCabe. But we're gonna show you this video. You see Bernie, he stays on message.
Senator Sanders, thank you so much for being with us. Just briefly, I'm wondering what you make of what you heard from former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Did you see his firing at the time as politically motivated? Is this righting a...
We don't know much about it. What I've been focusing on right now, Anderson, is the need to pass the most consequential piece of legislation in the modern history of this country and demand that the wealthiest people in this country start paying their fair share of taxes so that we can address the long neglected needs of working families. And one of the concerns that I have, you may have read this, is that this legislation is enormously popular, enormously popular. Over 80% of the American people want to lower the cost of prescription drugs. 84% of the American people want to expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing aids and eyeglasses. But you know what? One of the problems we have is that millions of Americans don't know what's in the bill. Because I think Congress has not done a good job. I don't think the president has done a particularly good job, and the media has done a pretty bad job in talking about what is in this legislation. So I have a real concern. People can agree with it, people can disagree with it, but we really have got to know what is in this consequential piece of legislation.
We definitely need to. And you can see that Anderson Cooper got a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that Bernie wasn't playing ball with him there for a bit. But look, this is very important. The politics are important, but as Bernie points out, what's actually included in it is important too. And his critique there of the lack of focus on the substance by the media, we now have polling data to indicate that that has been consequential. So I'm gonna dive into a bunch of different aspects of this, but I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to opine first.
Yeah, there's two fun / problematic things in there. One is McCabe's now a CIA, I'm sorry, that's hilarious. CNN contributor. He was former head of the FBI. And so that's Anderson Cooper's bubble. So he's like, oh, but the McCabe thing's really important. Let me ask Bernie Sanders about it. And Bernie Sanders like, no, your Trump drama is not at all important. I'm gonna talk about the bill, and I don't really care about your question. So I enjoyed that steamrolling that happened. In the interview, Anderson Cooper also suggested that progressives need to cut priorities, and Bernie Sanders pushed back against that. Now, to be fair to Anderson Cooper, that's a legitimate question, and that is among the things that are being asked now. Should we cut the number of years, or should we cut some of the priorities in the bill? And so I don't begrudge that question, but of course, the framing matters, and oftentimes progressives are told what are you going to do to compromise? But not much is asked of conservative Democrats, corporate Democrats, but you guys know that. So, and of course, Bernie did a great job of laying out the different principles in the bill, and he's asking the most relevant question. If these provisions are all incredibly popular, which they are, why aren't we passing it in a democracy?
Yeah. Bridget, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm so glad to see how Bernie handled this. I completely agree. I mean, frankly, I'm not really that interested in covering every little kind of administrative update of these former Trump world people. I think we have so much more important stuff on the slate right now, and I'm happy to see Bernie really pivoting to talking about what I think could be such historic legislation for the American people. And I think he's completely right. The fact that everything in this bill is incredibly popular, but the media really hasn't done a great job of explaining what's in this bill, how it has the potential to really help American families. And so from childcare to infrastructure to healthcare to paid leave, this is important stuff. And I think I love that he completely steamrolled Anderson Cooper. He's not really interested in sort of helping to sort of launder this former Trump person's reputation. I know he has a relationship with CNN. Yeah, I love to see this, and I think Bernie is exactly right. I think that he's really trying to stand up for the American people who really need what's in this bill.
Agreed. Yeah, I remember the Andrew McCabe thing in the beginning, and that was kind of interesting because it was so incredibly petty. Like, we don't often see something so petty in American politics, and so that was interesting. Him then reversing it and then giving him the pension, like, okay, I'm not friends with him. What do I care at this point? That's just not as interesting, but maybe I'm a shallow guy, I don't know. Anyway, let's return to the infrastructure bill because I wanna read through little bits of information that, look, a lot of our members of our audience might be familiar with some of this, but there's been so much of an attempt to distract us on a variety of levels during this debate, making it about a couple of moderates, making it about top line figures and all of that I wanna make sure you understand this stuff, including, by the way, that 75% of surveyed Democrats, in a CNN poll, by the way, so it's a sort of thing that they could bring up there, prefer Congress to, quote, pass a bill that enacts all of the proposed social safety net and climate change policies, with support for such a package rising to 84% among liberals. So look, for Democrats, it's incredibly popular. We know it's popular in the population at large, but this is a reason to put more pressure potentially on the holdouts. But in Anderson Cooper's defense, it's hard to get Sinema on to comment when she's off gallivanting anonymously around Europe and won't even tell us what country she's in. But anyway, to pay for it, we know that taxing the rich is very popular. I'm gonna bring up this chart, feel free to go back later and screenshot it. Anyway, increasing a variety of different taxes to pay for this is incredibly highly supported, with strongly support and somewhat support massively overwhelming the opposed numbers there. So people want it, Democrats especially want it. This is what they were promised, they know how to pay for it. And by the way, when you have them rank components of this bill, what's most important for them, actually increasing taxes on the wealthy and corporations is like the single most popular part of this for Democrats. And even for Republicans, it ranks very highly up there. If we could go to this next chart. The next one with all the little mini bars, yeah. So the text is too small, don't worry about that. But the top line thing is increasing taxes on the wealthy. Democrats love that, but that is one of the most popular components for Republicans as well. And it might well not happen in the bill because Sinema and a few others don't like it. You'll be shocked to find out that Medicare, dental, and vision and hearing expansion is very high up on the list as well. By the way, Republicans love that even more than Democrats. They cite that as a top line, most important thing as well. That's some interesting information, and it's good that people are so supportive of this. But there is bad news as well. And considering that this is basically the only big domestic policy thing that's been discussed for a couple of months now in the US, it's likely to be the last big achievement of the Biden administration for his first term, certainly before the midterms, if it happens at all. When you ask people how much they know about it, only 10% say they know a lot of the specifics. And that's not like the result of a test where we evaluate, nah, you thought you knew, but you didn't. That's literally just asking people, do you think you know a lot? They might well not, but they don't have much confidence. They have a general sense and some specifics, or a general sense and no specifics, despite it being such an important issue for literally months. And I have one more poll result, and I fear that one we just showed you plays into this one quite a bit, which is that only about 1/3 of Americans think the plan would help them directly or help the economy overall. And that includes just 61% of Democrats, even though it's the Democrats' bill. It objectively would for tens of millions of Americans and certainly would help the economy, but people don't necessarily get that, even if in the abstract they support basically every provision of it. And why not? The only way that it's been presented to them is that it's too costly, it's too divisive. Why are the progressives pushing for this? Maybe we should cut it. Not really focusing on the parts of it that are awesome or that could help a variety of different Americans.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Yeah, so first of all, why don't people know what's in this, honestly, really large bill that has super important provisions, right? And I'll get to one of the provisions in particular in a second. Well, there's two reasons. Normally, the way that you find out about provisions in a bill is through the marketing that the two different parties do. If you just wait on the press to cover it, they won't do that. They cover fights. So if the Democrats or Republicans start a fight, then they'll cover that because they'll find that conflict to be interesting and potentially ratings worthy. So they're not gonna go into a bill and go, look at this, look at this, look at this. That's not what our press does at all, right? And so they'll do a quick summary and then they'll move on with their lives. So hence, why isn't anybody talking about from the Republicans or Democrats? Well, the Republicans have nothing to attack, and that is not normal. Now, normally, they'll see a proposal for a Green New Deal, and they'll find a provision where they'll say, oh, look, by the way, cows produce methane. That's a fact. They don't say that they're gonna do anything about it, and they will twist that to they're gonna ban hamburgers. And they'll try to make the bill about, okay, this is not about helping the planet. This is not about how your kids are gonna die at some point or your grandkids. From, by the way, or you, because we're in the middle of climate change due to severe storms, but it's about banning hamburgers, right? Now, Republicans are not doing that in this case because number one, the bill's freaking awesome. That's why we're telling you how popular the provisions are. The Republicans have already seen those polls and they're like, do not talk about paid family leave. Oh my God, that polls so well. If people find out that's in this bill, we can call it a hamburger, we can call it anything we want, but people are gonna want it, so shh. Okay, now the Democrats, why don't they brag about how great the bill is? Number one, their corporate donors have not given them permission, and because they're in the middle of trying to chop it to pieces, right? And remember, that's still at least 80% of the Democratic Party. You think Chris Coons, a giant corporate Democrat, is gonna jump out and be like, oh, I will champion this bill about raising corporate taxes. He'd lose half his donors and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Of course he's not gonna champion that. Why? The most popular provision is raising taxes on corporations. How come no one is talking about it? It's the most popular provision. Wouldn't you want to brag about it? Because the Democrats are also 80% owned by those same corporations. The media are those corporations. They're literally multi-billion-dollar corporations. They're not gonna send out their news actors to tell you how great it is to raise their own taxes.
Yeah.
Like, please don't be naive. You know what giant corporations are in the business of? Making money. And if their taxes are raised, they will make billions less overall in mass. They're not gonna, oh well, out of the goodness of our heart, we should do the real news. Good one, good one. I haven't seen it yet, right? So a smaller private company like us, we actually do that. That's why you guys like us. But those giant public corporations must maximize profit, and you're not gonna do that by arguing for this bill. That makes you take some paid family leave. Well, back to the mines, they don't want that, and all these other provisions. And finally, Democrats suck at marketing. So they're always like, oh, we have a great bill. Let's send out Schumer and Pelosi to mumble about it, right? So that combination is what leaves you with a bill that you would love, but that you hardly know about. And whenever we tell you any part of it, you're like, yes. And I say you, not as our progressive audience, but the entire American people. Lastly, sorry, Bridget, I'm taking up so much time, but the paid family leave, we'll talk about it more later, but it gives you 12 weeks, okay? 12 weeks off if you're gonna have a kid. So there's other provisions in there, but roughly speaking. When you tell Americans about that, they're like, are you serious? I don't just have to use my sick days? On average, Americans only have 7 sick days, including for pregnancy, actual sickness, COVID, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we're healthy people though.
Yeah, right, hilarious. Like when you tell other developed nations some of the laws in America, they're like, no, you must be making that up. I mean, that's so barbaric. So you have all of your sick days, the things you get sick, plus a pregnancy? Are you guys insane, right? And those are the provisions. And that's why the Republicans are like, shush, 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 don't tell anybody what's in this bill. And same thing with Manchin and Sinema, because they're trying to butcher the best parts of the bill in favor so that their donors can write them more checks. That's literal. Yeah. Bridget.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, I completely agree. I think that it's, that poll, John, that you were just reading about how many Democrats don't think this would make a big impact in their lives was so depressing. And I think it really goes to show this really deep marketing problem that we have on the left. And I think it's really interesting what we as Americans have accepted as or like what we think of as being too expensive and what we think of as like, oh, we need that. So we can talk about like military spending all day long and nobody talks about like, oh, it's too expensive. We're not even primed to frame it that way. But when it comes to something that will actually have a tangible impact to most Americans' lives, we automatically just accept that it's too expensive, can't afford it, it's a problem, this and that. And so I think that really is reflective of exactly what you were just talking about, this idea that we have a real marketing problem. And I think sending folks out to mumble about this bill is not gonna cut it. I think if people find out that this bill could really get the United States on par with every other developed nation in the world, I think people might start perking up and saying, hey, that actually would help me. But this idea that it's not going to make a difference to most folks, that makes me so sad. And I think it's indicative of what a bad job some folks on the left have done in terms of talking about this bill and marketing this bill. So I completely agree.
Yeah, I'm gonna make one small note, John, about that, because there's a silver lining in there. 61% of Americans think that it is not going to benefit them personally, but 75% of Americans are in favor of it anyway. I mean, imagine what that is.
Nice.
That's awfully nice of them. Seriously, so there's a little bit of hope in the decency of the American people. And wait till they find out it actually does help them directly. Then that 75 might be 95%.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, would Biden do anything other than mumble? I guess if he was touring the country. You would want him to at least try, though. I try to acknowledge that I'm probably in a bubble. I don't have CNN on all day, and so I don't. It is possible that Biden is doing a lot of stuff that I'm not seeing in terms of going out there and doing rallies or whatever. But it really does feel like I don't know why he wanted to be president. He's not doing anything really. Like he's not even trying and failing. That might at least be funny to watch. He's really just not. Like in terms of legislation, I guess he hoped that there'd be no cinema, because as soon as there's a cinema, nope, guess we can't do anything. With all of the things he could potentially do via executive orders, executive actions, like we've got a commission. Someday I hope it comes through and we got something good we can do, but I just don't see it. And in terms of the media failing in this, like there's a lot of good reasons that they've failed. I think a good part of it is what Cenk was saying. They like the conflict of it. It's easy to talk about and it's more dramatic. People desperately want people to pay attention to what they're making, so you make it dramatic, and telling people about the contents of a bill is not dramatic. That's why so few people really cover it. But also, Media Matters has a study out showing how little cable news has covered the fact that fossil fuel industries are trying to weaken the climate provisions of this bill. And why wouldn't they? Those fossil fuel companies advertise on CNN and MSNBC. Same for things like Medicare expansion and negotiating on prescription drugs and things like that. Those companies also advertise on those networks. So in the same way that we can't expect Manchin to kill the coal industry when that would personally hurt his finances, why would these big networks like be really in favor, like rah on a bill that's gonna harm some of their biggest advertisers? We can't be surprised by it, but we do need to make sure that people know that part of this is going on.
Yeah, last thing I'll say real quick to answer the mystery of why Biden wanted to be president. John, you're a really decent, wonderful person. So you think I would like to get some things done and for the American people, etc. 99% of politicians do it for the ego. That's it. Period. And his idea of fighting for something is, this is his history in the Senate. You could look it up. Is going and making deals where Republicans win on anywhere from 80 to 95% of the issues. His MO, his whole career has been basically surrender and disguised as negotiations. So here he's not sure who he should surrender to. He's like, well, I'm trying to play the surrender card, but who do I give it to? And so when you give it to Sinema and Manchin, they go, oh, thank you very much. Now I'm killing your bill. The one that you named your whole campaign after. right? And he's like, wait, I didn't want that. And he's flummoxed. And I think he literally doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, time to take a break. Oh, sorry, Bridget, continue.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think you're exactly right. And I think it's so sad because this is what the American people voted for. We want this. We went to the polls and we voted for this. And it's just pretty depressing that it seems like, I agree, it's like people are floundering and we're not getting the thing that we voted for, the flagship piece of legislation that we all wanted.
Yeah, I think that a lot of folks on the left, it happens on the right too, have theories about how people are evil and they act this way and that way on purpose, and there's secret geniuses manipulating things behind the scenes. No, you'd be surprised. Generally, they don't know what they're doing at all, even all the way up to the president. And so when faced with this kind of intransigence, I don't think Joe Biden, even though he's taking corporate money his whole life, I don't think he fully comprehends the power that the donors have over fellow Democrats, and he's confused by it. And he's never thought through how do I defeat that, especially when I'm in the vulnerable position of also taking corporate money. How do I get beyond that problem? It literally might be beyond his capacity. And I know that people in Washington would find that deeply offensive because you're supposed to hero worship of the powerful, right? And in anything that isn't ass kissing of the powerful seems like outrageous to people in Washington. Like if they heard me now, they'd ban me forever. They'd be canceled. You're saying that Biden might not be smart enough? How dare you? Don't you know that he is the president and you must bow down to him? He's the leader of the Democrats. No, look, I'm actually trying to do him a favor, because if he knows what he's doing, then it's way worse, right? Then he's like, oh, donors, let's play a game where we all lie to our voters at the same time, and I get Manchin to pretend and Sinema to pretend. Oh, golly gee, I want to build back better. Oh, but I guess there was nothing we could do, right? And so I genuinely think that isn't it. I don't think he's that evil. But in terms of brightness, that's a different issue, and that's keeping it real.
Okay, well, we'll have evil after the break, don't worry.
Okay. All right, yes, we go to Texas after the break, so evil's coming up. But this law is particularly evil. This is a story we broke, so you haven't seen it anywhere else yet, and it's amazing. We'll be right back. Okay, I love our audience. Barrel-aged millennial writes in on the YouTube super chat. Democrats can't even pull off the Oprah strategy. You get sick leave, you get sick leave, and you get sick leave. It's not that hard. Hey, it really isn't, by the way. If that's all Biden did, the whole country would be talking about it, right? Be like, oh, why did he come out there and tell everybody they're getting paid family leave and point to people and, wow, that was weird, that was interesting. Wait, do we? That's all you need. Wait, do we? All right, Nikki Goldman just joined, became a Young Turks member, an American hero. Thank you, you guys make this show possible. Let's bring some truth to people, huh? Shake things up a little bit. Gabby Marita says, I saw Ryan Grimm on MSNBC the other night, and Chris Hayes' eyes went wide in panic when Ryan brought up corporate bribes to conservative Democrats who are blocking the infrastructure bill. Now, look,
really?
Yeah, that's so telling.
On Chris Hayes,
yeah, look,
maybe.
Number one, Ryan Grimm's a TYT contributor, and of course, Washington bureau chief of the Intercept. So he actually covers the real news, where they cover it and we cover it from the perspective of what actually drives political decisions. If you're going to cover that as a real reporter, you talk about donors, right? But on MSNBC, that's pretty much verboten. Chris Hayes is a good progressive secretly, But on air, he's probably panicking. I mean, if Ryan keeps doing this, one, I'm gonna have to ban him. And two, if I kept bringing him on, I might get fired. No joke, no exaggeration. By the way, I like Chris a lot. Chris, I dare you to go and do corporate donors segments, just one segment, every day for 2 weeks straight and see how it turns out. Guaranteed on the second night, they pull you in and say, hey, Chris, remember who the home team is. And he knows that, that's why he doesn't do it. He's a good guy trying to do the best he can in a very corrupt system. RFK says the Dems who want to pass should be holding down town halls in every burg in America. Yeah, where are the town halls? They're probably scared of the right wingers, etc.
It's still a pandemic. I mean,
I know.
You've seen how town halls go in schools.
I know, but they suck at marketing. All right.
Yeah, they do.
Jess B. Anti-Racist says, Bernie yet again smacking Anderson Cooper and CNN in the face with truth. Colorado Blue Blazer Regular says, would be kind of nice if Bernie had pointed out directly to Cooper, I want to raise your taxes because you're a Vanderbilt heir and you have lots of money by winning the genetic lottery. I don't think even Bernie would go that hard. And by the way, that's the kind of thing that gets you banned. Hey, you made it personal. You're not allowed to make it personal. Well, you make it personal by arguing for lower taxes for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Little Mac McGee wrote in, gee, I wonder why nobody knows what's really in the bill. I mean, I see detailed info being put out about it all the time on TYT. I'm assuming the same at all other news outlets. What America's premier news sources don't inform their audiences? I mean, he's kidding, but that joke is really telling. So we're the only ones who cover the details of the bill. Why? Aren't they in the news business? All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Bridget with you guys. All right, John's got more news.
I do, actually. We're gonna launch right into this video.
Pete Buttigieg has been on leave from his job since August after adopting a child. Paternity leave, they call it, trying to figure out how to breastfeed. No word on how that went. But now he's back in office as the transportation secretary, and he's deeply amused, he says, to see that dozens of container ships can't get into this country.
Okay, I consider myself a lifelong learner. I like that people even older than me still learn things. You just saw Tucker Carlson learned what paternity leave was. It only took till his late 40s or whatever. He still hasn't learned how to pronounce Buttigieg's name, but there's still time. You know, the administration is still fresh. But anyway, what you saw there was a cable news host with an audience of millions every night making a casually homophobic joke about a cabinet secretary. A politician who on the merits and on the policy, I'm not a big fan of. I don't know, Cenk isn't a huge fan of, but Tucker had to make it homophobic. He had to make it about his identity. And it's also nonsense. He talks there, he's shocked that there's paternity leave. You will be equally shocked, I'm sure, to find out that Fox News has paternity leave. Todd Pirro actually announced earlier this year, he's from Fox and Friends First. He took 6 weeks paternity leave. That's the program that they have at Fox. Jesse Waters did it as well after the birth of his third child. And let's see, Pirro said at the time, I cannot thank Fox enough for providing all fathers who work here with such a generous paternity leave. And I saw another message, and I want you to bear this in mind because Tucker isn't just being casually homophobic. He isn't just mocking the idea that a father would want to be near their kid after a birth. He's implying that it's not manly, that there's something wrong about you that you would want to do this. Certainly if you're gay and you want to do this. And I saw a quote that I want to read from Todd Pirro. And I just wish that Todd Pirro could say it to Tucker Carlson and we could see Tucker Carlson's response to it. Todd Pirro said, this experience has changed me in a profound way and in ways I won't fully comprehend until my daughter is older. But for now, that smile coming from the crib each morning, immediately followed by morning snuggles, is what I will cherish the most. There is nothing better. Or if you're Tucker Carlson, you're being a wuss, you're wasting your time. Why are you doing this? Are you gonna learn how to breastfeed? It's pointless, just send the mom in there. Look, there's a lot of problems here and we're gonna talk more about paternity leave in general, but feel free to dive in.
Yeah, so there's two major issues here, although John brings up a great point about the third issue, which is oh, it's not masculine to love your kids and want to spend time with them when they're born. I mean, these guys are lunatics. So, but all right, the two major ones are, one is homophobia. He's brazen about it. That's if you will, he's out of the closet with his homophobia. So he just says, oh, paternity leave, what is he gonna breastfeed? I get it, he's gay, I can't breastfeed. And then, you see the right wingers of social media reacting with, he's joking about how, about gay people. Wait, how does that make it better? And by the way, are they friends? Are Tucker Carlson and Buttigieg friends that I don't know about? So, oh no, he's just ribbing him. Yeah. No, they're not friends. Buttigieg is not happy to have that joke/slur. And then, when I pointed this out again on social media, right wingers right back in. Oh my God, you're demonizing us. No, wait a minute. You can't say that gay couples shouldn't adopt, shouldn't get married, by the way, shouldn't have sex at all in some of the laws they wanted to pass, and shouldn't get paternity leave, and then say we're demonizing. No, you're demonizing gay people and saying they should not have the same rights as straight people. You can't demonize people, and then when we point it out, go, I can't believe you're demonizing us. No, your own positions are demonizing you. I mean, get a load of that irony. Is that amazing? Don't state our positions publicly. People will think we're monsters. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And by the way, I didn't do it, Tucker did it. Okay, you're big, Tucker Carlson, he's the one doing it, you're the one loving it. So own up to it. You hate gay people, and that makes you un-American. You don't believe in equal rights. Just own up to it. You don't like this country. You don't like democracy. You don't like equality. You don't like justice. That's why you're a right winger. Just own up to it. Oh, he's demonizing us with the facts. It's true. I don't want him to have the same rights. I don't want black people to have the same. Police abuse. So what? So what?
That's Tucker.
Right? Well, I can't believe you're demonizing us by telling us things that are true. Trans people shouldn't play in sports. Trans people shouldn't go in certain bathrooms. Muslims should be banned. These are your positions. Don't demonize us by telling people the truth. Shut up already. Either be a decent person and a real American, or yes, we are going to proudly and loudly tell people what your positions are and how horrific they are. I'll get back to paid family leave, but first, Bridget.
I mean, of course, it's gonna sound like you're demonizing them if you just repeat back their own horrible positions and horrible stances. I think that comment is just so beyond ignorant. It's so backward, it's homophobic. And I also think it's a really good example that we see from Tucker Carlson again and again, where he is getting on television and telling his millions of viewers that the very same things that he and his Fox News colleagues enjoy is not, the American people do not deserve that. The same thing with vaccine mandates. We all know that all the different Fox News talking heads are all vaccinated, and yet he gets on TV and talks about how bad vaccine mandates are. It's the same thing. Fox News employees enjoy paid paternal leave, yet he gets on TV and says that average Americans don't deserve it, or if they take it, they're some sort of wuss or they're not real men. I think it's so see-through, it's so hypocritical, and it's really just sad. It makes me so sad that he's able to go on TV and beam this into the homes of millions of Americans every night. It is so ignorant, and I thought we were over this. I thought we were over casual homophobia. I thought we were over these casual displays of just toxic masculinity. Yeah, I thought we were over it, but I guess not at Fox News.
Yeah, I can only imagine, like Tucker Carlson, he knows a lot of people, and I'm sure some of them are gay. They're probably giving him a real talking to, probably gonna criticize him publicly about it.
And dear Rubin, incoming in 3, 2, 1 to tell Tucker Carlson, oh yeah, of course gay people shouldn't get parental leave. What are they, best breastfeed? No, you're right, bash gay people more. Where's my check? Where's my check?
But you're 100% right. They sure hate when you point out what they believe. Like Bill O'Reilly hated Media Matters for literally years. All they do is post clips of his show, which is what he does. But they hate when they do it for some reason. I never understood that. Like you just said it, there's a camera, you're looking at the camera right now. How do you not see that there's a camera? But anyway, yeah, no, Bridget, you make the best point. We talked about this a lot on TDR. It's like obviously Tucker Carlson does not want other people to have paid leave, paid sick leave, paid family leave, maternity leave, paternity leave. He's not there for his base, he's there for the CEOs in the same way that they claim to be populist, but they like talk snidely about ever raising the minimum wage, literally ever. But thankfully, it is pretty popular. Now this is America, we're not a true democracy, so it being popular doesn't mean it's ever gonna happen. But in theory, the fact that 82% say mothers should receive paid leave, and 69% say that fathers should receive paid leave. That's something. I'm not sure why the number drops off so much, but we are a population that has been trained to always believe that we deserve to be ground into the dirt, and that getting profits for our overseers is the most important thing. And despite that, the numbers are still pretty high. But despite all of that, a 2019 study by Pew found that the US ranks last out of nearly 50 nations when it comes to parental leave. One of only 3 developed countries, or arguably developed countries, not to mandate paid parental leave, including maternity leave. Only 5 states and the District of Columbia require it at a subnational level. And because of this, as a result of this, 1 out of 4 American women go back to work within 2 weeks after giving birth. 2 weeks.
Yeah,
it's madness.
It's actually it's worse than that. Yeah. So look, it's so typical for Jesse Waters, or for any conservative, to only realize these things when it happens to them, because they're missing the empathy gene. They have no empathy for any other human being. That's why when John referred to it earlier, when Jesse Waters had a baby, he came out and said, "Oh, I'm in favor of paternity leave. I had no idea." You could have looked into it. You're theoretically in news, right? You could have had empathy for other people, even though you were not in their situation.
Meghan McCain said the same thing.
Yeah, but God forbid. That's right, Meghan McCain. Until it happens to them, and by the way, every Republican senator that's in favor of gay rights, they're like, oh, my son turned out to be gay. Well, I was busy hating every other person, but I don't want you to hate my son. Now I'm in favor of gay rights. Oh, well, are you not merciful, right? So now on paid parental leave, guys, so in the bill, that the $3.5 trillion bill that progressives are pushing for, there's 12 weeks of paid family leave. That would be 12 weeks more than what we have now, mandated federally. We have none, 0. Other countries cannot believe it. They can't believe it. Do you know how many weeks, well, I can't do the math on the weeks. You know how many months Finland has off for new mothers and fathers? 7 months.
What?
7 months, okay? And if you're a single parent, they say, well, take the one for the mom and the dad, 14 months, okay? Now,
the average American doesn't get that much time off in their life. Ever, altogether.
Like the Europeans cannot believe how barbaric America is. They get 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 7 months, on average, all throughout Europe, okay? When you tell them we have 0 mandate, they're like, no, that can't. You mean paternity leave? Even that's monstrous. You don't care about the dads at all? No, we don't even have any maternity leave. They're like, well, how could that be? What are you supposed to do? So now the conservatives' excuse is, well, some companies voluntarily give it. Now it's true, we do, right? Because we care about our employees. You know how many?
It's literally the only reason I want kids, honestly. I need time off, man.
To get our paternity leave here, yeah. So, so I looked into it. How many companies offer it? Only 19% of American workers are covered by any maternity or paternity leave at all.
Wow.
So over 80% have none of it. And you only on average have 7 sick days the whole year for the average American worker. That means, I guess you gotta use your 7 sick days to have the kid, but if you don't, if God forbid you were sick earlier, like when you were pregnant, right? The other countries would ask us, are you serious? Like, you have to go all the way till you have the baby, and the next day you have to show up at work? Yes, that's the law in America. That's how insane it is. Why are we not talking about what an amazing bill this is? Meanwhile, Fox News is out there going, can you imagine some weak people want paternity leave after they have kids? Back to the mines. And they pretend to be populist.
Yep.
And they pretend to be pro-life. These are people who are always going on and on about how they're pro-life, but the second that child comes into the world, where are they? They don't want what's best for what's gonna actually make this child's life better. We know that when children are born, it is better to have a parent in the house with them for the first few months. And for a party that claims to be so pro-life, I'm so curious why they're not interested in doing what we know is best for kids.
Yeah, 100%.
It's almost, Bridget, as if they don't care about the life of the kid as much as they care about making the women do something against their own wishes, thereby taking their freedom through government tyranny. It almost seems like that, but I'm sure it can't be because they have the exact opposite talking points.
Hypocrisy, never.
All right.
Do you want to push on to a next story? Or you want to do the break and then do two?
We got to take the break. Okay, guys, more horrors that we dissect when we come back. So a couple of programming notes. Check out tyt.com/impacts. If you ever wondered, hey, I wonder if TYT's actually helped push any positive change. So tyt.com/impacts, because you can see what you did, the great work that you guys have done in pushing for so much change. Oh, I see the Benjamin Crump interview there. That's one of my favorites. He was wonderfully generous and said that if it wasn't for TYT, the Trayvon Martin story would not have gotten the traction that it did, and it made a big difference. So
he said that?
Yes.
We always wondered because we covered it so early, but that's amazing.
Yeah, we were the first national show to cover it, got millions of views, which then got the attention of other media, et cetera, and to see how Trayvon's attorney acknowledge that was just amazing. So thank you guys for all the wonderful stuff that you've done. All right, and if you missed Anna's interview with Ilhan Omar earlier in the week, good news, we have a podcast network, so you can go and check out that podcast anytime you want. It's at the top of the Wednesday show. By the way, tomorrow, Dr. Rashad Ritchie is going to be on Good Day Chicago. That's at 8:30 a.m. Central. So if you're in Chicago, make sure you check that out. It's going to be great to see Rashad on that popular show in Chicago on TV. We're going to our members. Kid tested Politburo approved, said, why would Tucker think Buttigieg would breastfeed? He's obviously forcing that baby to drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
I mean, he said, by the way, nice job.
How did he have that so fast?
They say stuff like that with a straight face. And then every once in a while when they're like, when you're like, you know that's absurd, right? Biden didn't make anybody drink Starbucks. Oh, I was just kidding. Kidding about what? What was your point? Is that a common joke that I missed? Let's make them all drink coffee. All right, anyways, Kofefe19 writes, since spending time with your family is something to be ashamed about, I thought conservatives were part of the party of family values. Isn't that a hilarious punchline now? That's all it is, and everybody knows it, even the Republicans know it. The Wizard of Frobos writes in, someone tell Tucker that no one gets paternity leave to breastfeed. Okay, Sherry Bova says 2 weeks, I couldn't walk upright after 2 weeks, shake my damn head. All right, we'll be right back.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
Back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Bridget with you guys. John, forward.
Okay, this is gonna be the lightning round on the power panel here. We're gonna get through so much. We got a fascinating news story up at tyt.com and it has to do with Texas. That's why we're showing you him, regrettably. You might already know that back on September 1st, Texas had 666 new laws, I'll never get over that number, that went into effect in one day. Some of them stoked significant controversy, especially the abortion law. We talked about it a lot here. That one really stood out, but there's literally hundreds, and some of them interact in ways that you might not know about at this point. So as of right now, unless the DOJ succeeds in getting that abortion law struck down, that means that presumably more unwanted babies will be born in Texas, which will, of course, naturally stress the state's foster care system, which has already been deteriorating under the current governor. But there's another law that's gonna interact with this in a really interesting way, a really lucrative way for some people. So this particular law sounds on its face like a good thing. This new law bars the state from having foster children spend the night in settings that are otherwise considered residential. So that includes things like Child Protective Services offices, motels, and churches. And recently, the state has been resorting to doing that more often. According to the Texas Tribune, in 1 month alone earlier this year, 415 Texas children spent at least 2 consecutive nights in unlicensed facilities. So that sounds good, but they do have to go somewhere. And Texas is not building their own residential state-controlled buildings. Instead, they're going to be privatizing it. As of right now, they already have capacity that they need built. They have fewer beds than they used to. They lost roughly 1,000 beds in group homes. And right now, they're gonna be moving to go with some of the companies that you might recognize from our conversations about private prisons and things like that. So you have, for instance, Geo Group that builds prisons. They're gonna be building facilities as well. And interestingly enough, Geo Group, their political action committee has actually given money to several top Texas Republicans. Since 2018, they've given $35,000 to statewide GOP groups, and also in that same year, the group spent $10,000 in support of Ken Paxton, the state's attorney general. They also gave up to $50,000 to Governor Abbott himself ahead of the 2014 election through the Texans for Abbott PAC. Now there's separate issues with the actual facilities. Established facilities have a lot of complaints against them, and even when they get shut down, they often just have their name changed and they're reopened somewhere else. There's very little actual regulation. But what is being created is an environment where companies like Geo Group, and not just Geo Group, are going to potentially make a ton of money by some of these laws that aren't getting talked about nearly enough. And there's far more details up at TYT.com right now. Andy Hirschfeld did this great reporting, but what do you think about it?
Yeah, guys, whenever you see articles like this, you can always check the description box below, and you can click on it if we're watching this later and read the whole article. Okay, now first, just a fun note that John brought up. It did pass 666 laws at once, a curious number. Jared Kushner, son-in-law of Donald Trump, owned 666 Fifth Avenue. Now, Qanon, I'm not saying anything, I haven't said a word. Did you know Jared's middle name is Mephisto? It's not. Okay. Okay, I can't help it. I have to actually clarify that it's a joke. It is not Mephisto. Okay, so now onto the substance. So guys, there's 2 really pernicious parts of this. So number 1, if you've privatized foster care, what would those companies need? They would need more customers. Well, how would you create more customers? Well, you could ban abortion, in which case you would have more kids that go into foster care. Well, they did it at the same time. And yes, those companies that run those foster care operations gave money, as John pointed out, to those same Republican politicians. Now, once you legalize bribery, as we have in this country, where corporations can give money to politicians, unlimited money, you would be nuts as a public corporation to not bribe politicians. You can the state can literally mandate more customers for you. And that's what they did. So they passed them at the same time. Okay, we're gonna ban abortion, which creates more customers for Geo Group, which then turns around and gives me money. Now, is that the only reason why they banned abortion? No, that's an issue that's been around for decades, and actual right-wing voters want it too. But while they're doing it, might as well make some cash, right?
Yeah.
Now, second problem with privatizing. Now, 1, they're gonna want to create more customers, and that's not a good thing. We don't want more people in foster care, right? And number 2 is, well, how are you gonna maximize profit? Yeah, sure, you're gonna charge the state more, okay? wait, we're the state, we're the taxpayers, that's a problem. Number two, especially if you own the politicians, you could do like the drug companies do. You're not even allowed to negotiate prices. That's it. Now, we can charge anything we want and the taxpayers have to pay. And we'll call that free market capitalism, okay? And then, because hypocrisy is hilarious for the right wing. And then finally, you're gonna wanna cut costs. How do you cut costs? Well, you cut costs by giving less services to the kids, less staff, cut corners, more harsh punishments. Maybe you sedate the kids with drugs.
Restrain them.
And then you read the story, there are horror stories of what they do to those kids, including this company.
Yeah.
All right, Bridget.
Yeah, first, I'm so grateful for TYT for covering this story. I first heard about this story from reading TYT, and I'm really grateful that folks are covering it. I think when it comes to the concerns of the most marginalized in our country, foster children, it's so easy for their needs and their voices to go erased. And so I'm really grateful that there are people who are amplifying this story. And I just think, I think it's an interesting connection that you made earlier about SB 8 in Texas and how that legislation really would sort of create a situation where they would have more and more unwanted kids who would have to go into the system. And so it is really sad. It is sad for me to think that we're at a place in this country where the well-being of our kids is essentially for sale. And I think we really need to think about whether or not that's the kind of country we want to live in, the country where the needs of our children are just for sale, that it seems that they're just being fed into the system to make more money for corporate interests. It's really so disgusting and horrifying. And if folks read that story of some of the things that are accused of going on in some of these centers, it's horrifying. And so I really think we really have to ask, is this the country where we want to live, where this kind of thing is going on, and the well-being of our children is just for sale by corporate interests?
Yeah, and it's amazing that, you see it laid out. They give money, now they give them business. It's amazing that we allow it as a country, that we think it's acceptable. And it's not just Texas Republicans. It's definitely Texas Republicans, but it's the Democrats as well. 98% of the Democrats are receiving the exact same sort of bribes.
All right, I'm gonna give you one last depressing fact about this, because this is happening in Texas, whether we like it or not, whether it makes you uncomfortable or not. So first of all, in a lot of these foster care facilities, of course, there's sexual abuse. Now, God forbid the right wing should be concerned about that. They're too busy trying to find non-existent ones in a pizza shop's basement, when in fact, it's happening right under their nose and they don't give a damn about it. They're privatizing it and paying for it. That's how sick it is, and they don't realize it. But one subsidiary of Geo Group specifically ran the Hector Garza Center, and 81% of the children there said they were put into painful physical restraints. In order to maximize profit, they're just tying the kids up so they have less work to do.
Yeah.
We cannot privatize foster care. It's insane.
Yeah.
And they've done it anyway, and they call that free market. There's nothing free market about it. There shouldn't be free market fire insurance or police, etc., because then only the rich will have it. And God help those poor kids when you say you cut costs as much as you like and the state will pay you whatever you demand because you already gave the money to the politicians. Our system is sick.
Yeah. Well, another aspect of our system, or at least our culture, is sick as well. So let's roll right into this video. Oh, I love those kids, but I don't love what they had to go through. So what you saw there was a group of kids at a school in Georgia that were protesting a recent string of actions, effectively, that combine. It was just a horrendous response to racial discrimination that was going on, and then more discrimination by the actual school. So let me walk you through it. Last week at Coosa High School in Rome, Georgia, a group of students were filmed waving the Confederate flag and hurling racial slurs. The 4 students filmed were carrying the Confederate flag in favor of, quote, Farm Day on School Spirit Day, which led up to homecoming. They did not face any repercussions. So in response, there was a protest that was planned to try to raise awareness of this and the fact that the school didn't do anything about students on film waving the Confederate flag and hurling racial slurs. So after the school found out about the protests. The administrator said over the intercom, quote, "The administration is aware of tomorrow's planned protest. Police will be present here at school, and if students insist on encouraging this kind of activity, they will be disciplined for, quote, encouraging unrest." Which is just great, just adds that extra 1984 thing to it. How dare you encourage unrest by letting people know about the fact that we were totally fine with kids acting completely racist on film. And so on the day of the initial incident, several students, a mixed group of black, white, and Hispanic students, went to the school's front office. This is their first attempt. They didn't initially want to do the protest, they wanted the school to do something. So they went and talked to the administrators. They say that black students were then suspended, while the white and Hispanic students who supported them were not. In Floyd County, which includes Coosa High School, 8% of black students were suspended, the highest percentage of any race. So even in their initial bid to do something about it, there was, it looks like, fairly explicit racial discrimination by the school targeting kids that were trying to have something done about the racial language that they had seen.
No, it doesn't look like it, it is. I'll tell you right now, the administrator that made that decision is a flat out racist. No questions, no ands, ifs, or buts. So I'm just gonna state the facts one more time, then I'm gonna kick it over to Bridget, okay? So there actually is unrest at the school where they bring Confederate flags, take over a spirit day and direct it in their own racist direction, to yell out slurs that could cause significant trouble at the school. There's nothing done about that unrest. Then these combined students go in and say, we might do a protest if you don't take action about that unrest that actually happened. And we're asking you, we're doing the right thing, we're coming in a civil way, etc. Before that protest that you saw, they had already suspended the black students. So how dare you complain about racism at this school and the unrest that already happened? I'll pretend you're doing the unrest and I'll suspend you ahead of time. Oh, with the white and Hispanic students, of course you're free to go, you're not black. So I guess, you know what, one more thing. That means at that school, you could say anything racist you want and you could do anything racist you want. And if a black student dares to complain about it, they will be suspended. Yeah. That's the sick decision that was made by that administrator.
Yeah, I mean, it is sick, and it's almost kind of hard for me to talk about because I've just been in this situation, and I think any black person in this country has probably been in this situation. It breaks my heart that these young people are dealing with it. And I think I know what it's like to, when you advocate for yourself, when you advocate for racial justice, when you use your voice and stand up and say, we're not gonna tolerate that. The powers that be turn it around and say, you're the problem, and say that you're the criminal. And I think every person of color in this country has experienced that. It is heartbreaking. And I love that these kids are not just quietly going along with it, that they are using their voice and turning this into a story. And even the way that they framed protest as unrest, you know, it is sort of 1984, and I think it's indicative of a lot of places in this country where we've turned it around and said, if you even talk about your experiences with racism, then you're the real racist. If you even try to advocate for yourself, you even try to raise your voice, then you're the problem. And I'm happy to see that this generation of kids isn't gonna take it, because nobody in this country should have to put up with this. It's disgusting.
You know, and what my final point, it reminds me, just this morning on the Damage Report, we talked about another story, and there's this pattern of schools being the real problems in some cases. Like, the students were terrible. In the story I'm about to tell you, there was a teacher, and the teacher was an art teacher, and he got into a conversation about race and history, and he started talking about how if young black men use the N-word, he should get to. That whole thing, a teacher like a month ago said that. And so students recorded it, and some of their parents went to the school and said, you gotta do something about this. Like, this teacher is out of his mind. He was saying the N-word literally in the video. And some of the vice principals, I think there were 2 vice principals, told the parents like that they weren't gonna do anything. And in their conversation about it, they raised the fact that cracker is just as offensive as anything he said, and that the students shouldn't be bothered by hearing his racist language because someday they'll be discriminated against anyway. That's what the school said as a defense for a teacher using the N-word on video.
Yeah, and look, and then you know what they're gonna do? They only have sympathy for racist people in power. They have no sympathy for the people who actually are the victims of that. So you want to talk about cancel culture? If we say, hey, wait a minute, that administrator shouldn't do that. I mean, students could walk around with Nazi flags and say the Jews will not replace us? That's not unrest. If a Jewish student complains, will he be suspended, right? But that's literally what happened with the Confederate flag. Racial slurs, Confederate flag to defend slavery, where they kept some of us, meaning Americans, as property and beat and murdered, etc. And they celebrate that. And then when you say, hey, can you not do that as an administrator? They're like, oh, cancel culture. That poor administrator. Well, how about the student who used his free speech to go say, hey, could the administration do something about the racist on campus? Cancel them, suspended. Is the right wing doing a rally for the black students who were suspended because their speech rights were taken away and they were canceled, literally out of school, right? Nope. Funny enough, they don't care about that version of cancel culture.
It's weird.
Interesting. It's almost as if they're not concerned about freedom of speech, but just concerned about defending racists.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, one more story.
Okay, let's do it. You might think that it can't get any crazier for American government than having elected officials who believe in, support, and have talked about at length on video about the whole QAnon thing. That we have elected officials like Marjorie Greene, Lauren Boebert that are pro-Q and others that dabble in it occasionally. But it can get crazier. What if Q himself were in elected office? We apparently might be moving towards that actually. So in a video posted on his Telegram channel, a man named Ron Watkins said that he was inspired to run for office after recently hearing a sermon from Pastor Jeff Durbin at a church in Mesa, Arizona. Durbin is a right-wing minister who has said he wants to execute women who have abortions. So, he's great. Anyway, an email address associated with Ron Watkins has filed a statement of intent with the office of the Arizona Secretary of State to run for a congressional seat. The filing is an essential step in running for public office and comes ahead of the candidate seeking to secure the required number of signatures to make it onto the ballot. There's a bit of an issue with it in that you have to actually live there to run there. And apparently it was reported earlier this year that he lives in Japan. But he at least wants you to think that he's running. So what's this about Q? Well, he worked for years as the administrator of a website called 8kun, previously known as 8chan, where the anonymous leaders of the QAnon movement, known as Q, exclusively posted updates since early 2018. So he has repeatedly denied personally being involved in it, but he was on a documentary on HBO about the origins of QAnon and seems to have on tape outed himself as actually being Q. At the end of the day, I have no idea if he actually is, but he has been involved with it from the very beginning. There is reason to believe that he might have been the person who has inflicted this whole movement on us, and now he himself appears to be running for office.
So I interviewed the director of that documentary. You can check it out on The Conversation. And so when I started watching the documentary, even before it got to the reveal where he basically says it on camera, well, with a very thin veneer of deniability, you realize, oh, he has access to what 8chan posts. Q posts on 8chan. At a minimum, he would know who Q is. He'd be the one person who definitely knows who Q is because he's the one that receives it. Then you realize there ain't no Q. Well, first of all, of course I knew that all along, but when you realize the mechanics of it, he's the one that controlled 8chan at the time. So, oh, I have a deep state official who is writing into 8chan using encrypted technology where I pass myself a note, okay? And so, like now billionaires are running for office, right? Cutting out, like Bloomberg's a good example. It's cut out the middleman. He's been funding politicians. But Trump's a good example. He said it in the debates. Yeah. He said, I paid off all these guys when I was a businessman, so I know how corrupt they are, right? And so he's like, you know what? I'm tired of paying them off. I'm just gonna run myself. So this is like, hey, I got Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I got most of the Republican Party that really do my talking points while leaving out the satanic cult child eating thing, right? And I helped to do a mini revolution in America. Why don't I just cut out the middleman and I'll run?
Yeah.
So he can deny it all he wants, but you can watch the documentary and see for yourself. And so he hasn't won yet. So in the old days, you would have said this, and it's a curiosity. Oh, a guy who believes in that there's satanic cults in the Democratic Party and Bill Gates and Fauci are running it and they eat babies. I mean, it happens. There's a country of 330 million people. There's some mentally unbalanced people. No, like 15% of Republicans, I think, believe QAnon is absolutely real. And so there you go. There's your hero. So he might win. He might go to Congress. I don't know. That's the state of the Republican Party.
I mean, I think it's a scam to make money. I don't trust anything this guy says. I completely believe that he's doing this to drum up fundraising opportunities. And yeah, I think it's just that, QAnon is a dangerous death cult. And I think he is just a scammer trying to scam people that he knows are unwell. And I think as Trump demonstrates, there is a market for that in this country. And I think he knows that and is using it.
I never thought about it that way, Bridget. And that phrase you just used is kind of a bit devastating. They're literally marketing to the unbalanced. Like they know, as any country has, a certain percentage that have significant mental health issues, right? And they view that as an opportunity.
Yep.
They're like, oh, we can make money off that. We can get famous off that. We can get power off that. And unfortunately, that percentage is much larger than we would have liked to believe earlier. But they're right there. They're pretty obvious. And a lot of them, it turns out the number's gigantic. And so they're filling a market need.
Yeah.
Capitalism, baby. Yeah. Okay.
I think we're done.
We are out of time. All right, everybody's got to check out Bridget Todd. Okay, so first of all, she works at Ultraviolet. You know that. You're all supporting that organization. Everybody knows that, okay? But I need you to go and check out the podcast. There are no girls on the internet, okay? Where you will ironically find girls. But it's a good way to remember. There are no girls on the internet. Bridget Todd. Bridget, you're awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. No problem. And John Idarola, of course, Damage Report. Check that out every single day. Nothing but awesome on it. Nina Turner on Tuesday. Okay, we got a whole nother hour for you guys. More madness. Here, let me give you, oh yes, now in Texas, of course, teachers are wondering if they have to teach that maybe the Holocaust didn't happen based on a law that they passed. Unreal, but real. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor, or concern for whose toes we might step on, or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. it only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It is not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com.
Drop it. All right, Power Panel, Cenk Uygur, JR Jackson, and Abelina Sabrina's back. She is, of course, a YouTuber and a Twitch streamer. Sabrina, great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. She of making John Idarola's hair go purple fame. And now we're doing the Pocky Chip Challenge. We're such Twitchers. Okay, Twitchy. So if we get to 7,000 subscribers, they're gonna meet that Pocky Chip at the end of October. So
are you doing that, Jay?
I am.
They asked me about that, and then I reminded them of who I am and that I don't do things like that.
Yeah, I on the other hand will do it, but I'm rooting for 6,999 subscribers. That way, Jordan Ewell, Brett, Brooke, Adriana Vega, they all have to do it at 6,200 subscribers. Well, if we don't get to 7,000, we don't get to 7,000. What can I do, right? And I'm not playing. I'm gone. I won't be doing it if we don't get to 7,000. Like, who dodged the bullet? All right, JR's got the news.
I've got something. We all saw over the past year, this year, all of the school boards that begin disrupted by protesters, angry parents saying people are going to hell, that they're anti of everything because of the mask wearing, because of teaching kids about what they should learn in school about our actual history. There's more to it than just that, because there's also an effort to replace many of these school board members with right-wingers that believe in these types of things like anti-vax, anti-masking, don't teach about our history. But it goes even deeper than that because there's a concerted effort behind that. So in 2021, there was at least 80 efforts to recall 207 school board members, and that's more than double any previous record for that. So there's a huge influx on that. The last twist on this is there's also big money behind it. Maybe that's not a twist. But anyway, let's go to some of those details. So there was a sudden interest in school boards. It is not an organic grassroots movement of angry parents. Rather, it's an effort orchestrated by seasoned right-wing political operatives who have formed a constellation of well-funded groups dedicated to disrupting school boards. So with the help of conservative media, they've already succeeded in pushing school boards into the center of these political debates, which is why we've all seen this. So just to give you guys a reminder of some of these things that have happened. This was the scene down in Poway, California. I think down in near San Diego. I think it was Poway, but it's down near San Diego, where some folks disrupted the school board meeting that wasn't open to the public. It was amongst the school board members. They left, and then these folks came in and declared themselves the new school board. Let's watch this really quick.
I have not been a member of any party or organization, political or otherwise, that advocates overthrowing the government of the United States or the state of California.
You guys can go home.
Whether unlawful.
You're finished.
I will not advocate or become a member of any party or organization, political or otherwise, that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or the state of California by force or violence or other unlawful means.
Woo!
Sergeant Thomas, stand please.
Sorry, it's not time for you to speak.
Okay, well, all I need for you guys to move.
No, they need to vacate because they actually have lost their jobs. So this is the new board.
They walked out.
They need to leave. So.
And they didn't adjourn.
So we're good.
We're good. So that was the ragtag version of them doing things like this, but there is more of an organized effort to this. So there's a Virginia-based Parents Defending Education. That's the group. They've emerged as this leading group that targets the school boards. Their activities include encouraging parents to create social media pages to, quote, document examples of woke indoctrination and waging lawsuits against, again, woke curricula. That's fun. So they've also put together this indoctrination map, is what they're calling it, where it targets certain schools for reasons that they may be teaching kids about anti-racism, offering teachers support. Okay, listen to this. Anti-racism, offering teachers support through affinity groups, and acknowledging inequity. This is what they're opposing. Anti-racism, acknowledging inequity. So if you're not looking at the racism problem, or then looking at the inequity problems, then you're just kind of acting like nothing is wrong. It goes back to the argument of, I don't see any color. I'm just here to continue to perpetuate the complete disenfranchisement of certain folks in the country, and I just don't see it. So they've got a map, and you can see all those lib areas where they're talking about how there's these woke groups that they need to target. So they also claim to be grassroots. This claims to be a grassroots effort, but as I point out, this is all backed up further. So let's look at this. Nicole Nelly, who's the group's president, is also the founder of Speech First. It's a right-wing nonprofit group that advocates for free speech on campuses. In 2018, The Nation reported that Speech First's board of directors included a former head of a Koch-backed trust and 2 conservative attorneys from Koch-funded programs. That's very grassroots. So prior to her work with Speech First, Nelly also worked for another Koch-funded organization, including Franklin News Foundation and the conservative nonprofit Independent Women's Forum. Neely, I believe, was also a Koch Summer Fellow for both the Center for Financial Privacy and Human Rights and the Competitive Enterprise Institute. And that's according to this watchdog group, SourceWatch. So is this gonna work? I mean, okay, this is the thing. This has always been this way. When we have money backing these types of groups that are supposed to look like they're grassroots, that's where we get the term astroturf from. When you're just running political campaigns and they're just, they're funded by the people, and the people have brought me here to discuss the problems that are wrong in our country. Now those people in those groups that are out here and are disrupting school boards, those are real people. I'm not saying that, but they're just getting backed by people who are pressing these buttons and making them think that there's this attack on their children's safety, knowledge, education, so they can be these foot soldiers in this quote unquote grassroots organization.
So this reminds me of when the Koch brothers took over the anger about the bank bailouts, and that led to the Tea Party, and people were so furious that all the banks had gone under and cost everybody jobs. We'd lost tens of millions of jobs. I think it was 13 million. And meanwhile, all the bankers are getting bailed out. So they're furious, they started the Tea Party. And the Koch brothers did something smart. They pulled up buses. They already had the buses painted, they had donuts, they had all the infrastructure. And they brought, and the real people were angry, and they took those real people, and instead of bringing them to Wall Street to protest the banks and their bailouts, they brought them to anti-Obamacare rallies. And they said, get your government hand off our Medicare. It doesn't have to make sense. It just, they're in the finance industry, the Koch brothers are in different ways. Like, well, we don't want you protesting us. But if they pass healthcare that would help you, that hurts our other business interests. So why don't we take these schmucks who are real people, but who aren't like the brightest bulbs, right? And we'll just use them for our own purposes to make money. So this one looks like grassroots. Those are real, deranged parents that you saw. But who's leading the charge and who organized it and who's got the big money behind it? A Koch fellow, I do declare. A Koch fellow doesn't quite sound grassroots, does they? Do they? And of course the arrogance of those, the actual grassroots parents there, right? Oh no, they're not the school board anymore, we are. Why? You didn't go through any of the democratic process, you didn't get elected, you didn't ask the other parents that also care, right? You just decided, I'm just gonna take the power, right? I mean, the entitlement is unbelievable. Now imagine a bunch of black dads or Muslim dads go over and go, oh no, that's it, we're taking over the school board. You guys are all evicted, we're now in charge. Do you have any idea how quickly we get a baton upside the head? Okay, meanwhile the cop is beseeching them. Like, could you, I can't tell, I don't know. What do you mean? No, move them out, move them out. I know, but they're white and they're right wingers. And don't they run this country? No, you have to go, you have to actually win elections. We all count. It's called America. I know you hate it, but that's how it works. And they're sick of it. They're like, we don't want to do the goddamn elections. We keep losing. I just want to go in there and say, okay, you're not the school board anymore, I am. Bunch of children. And so the Koch people see that and go, perfect. They don't know anything. We'll just direct them for our own purposes. Sabrina.
I love how they even expect as if anybody's even going to recognize them as an official school board, saying, no, you're dismissed. Okay, are the teachers going to accept you? Are the other parents going to accept you? Of course not. But I think it's also important to ask why school boards specifically, why is there such a strong organized effort behind protesting at school boards? And I feel like maybe it's so that they can, use the children as pawns, because then they can justify the violent actions that they've been taking. Granted, the video that was shown earlier was a little bit more tame, even though they kind of overtook it. But when you take like kind of violent action in the name of children's safety, it seems like you can kind of get away with a lot. And I think maybe that's part of why they're choosing school boards specifically.
Well, that's part of it too, because I think they'll throw out the lines of, oh man, they're indoctrinating our children. They're co-opting our children's education. They're telling them all these non-facts. And look, they're changing the direction of our country through our children. Don't you want to protect your children? They're pedophiles. Like every overreaching statement that they can say about what these folks are doing is just a 10 times fold version of what they're doing. So they'll suddenly go behind the scenes. This isn't using the children. This isn't piggybacking off of children's education to then say that, hey, we need to take over the school boards to not protect them because of something that we need to push for, some kind of political positioning that these folks that have the money are trying to push for. So it almost disarms folks from saying, why are you guys using the children for these political stances? Because they've already started their whole conversation by saying, you're using the children for these stances. So now it seems crazy for both sides to be pointing the same finger at each other. They've co-opted that message already.
Well, JR, I mean, even the title of the group is hilariously ironic. Speech first, where the whole point of the group is freedom of speech. Now, don't talk about racism. Wait, what? I thought you were for freedom of speech. And I don't know if you know this, but racism actually happened in this country. And if we're teaching history, it's a little bit hard to avoid, right? There was a whole thing about slavery. We got to teach this somehow, don't we? Civil rights movement, Jim Crow, did that not happen? Shut up, don't ever speak again. Speech first.
Yeah.
I mean, because guys, you got to understand, for you're a decent person, you're a rational person, if you're watching the Young Turks, it's hard for you to understand the right-wing mentality. They think freedom of speech means I get to speak and you don't. And they don't think that's hypocritical, because that's how deep seated their entitlement is. They genuinely believe that. No, freedom of speech is for me. It's not for you teaching about racism. By the way, Texas says we should now teach like both perspectives, the reverse of anti-racism. Is that pro-racism? Like, it's a real question. What are we supposed to, like, how do you give the other perspective? And by the way, these guys going to the school boards, we picked a fairly benign one. Remember, we showed you the one before, the guy, the well-dressed guy talking about how he needed 20 strong men in his house, in his bedroom. No, 20 strong men to go take over the school board and physically remove them. So they're threatening violence all across the country. Meanwhile, there's some billionaires behind them going, I mean, this is the crazy system we live under because that's the money that drives it. Well, it's like the girl with a dragon tattoo, but it's real, right? Anyways, all right, guys, we apparently have to take a break. But we're not done with that yet because we still haven't gotten to the story where Texas says maybe we should teach that the Holocaust was a good thing. Kind of a conversation that actually happened. So we'll do that when we come back. Back during the social break here. First of all, if you're wondering why I'm amped up sometimes, A, always, B, it's because of Too Strong coffee. It'll give you a jolt. In fact, one of our new brands is called Justice Jolt. That's the espresso one. But it also gives money to progressive causes, and I'm totally addicted to it now. I'll just say it. Like when I get other coffee now, I'm like, well, woo. Okay, so twostrongcoffee.com/TYT, check it out. Let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Rochelle Anderson says, I went back to work a week and a half after a C-section, only because I couldn't afford 6 weeks off and I had to get food stamps. You can't live on minimum wage if they give food stamps on top of it. So this is America. Other countries cannot believe it. But yes, as we were talking about in the first hour, we drive women back to work, sometimes immediately after birth, because 81% of employers in this country have no paid maternity leave or paternity leave, and the government does not mandate it. Other countries are stunned by how barbaric that is. So that's the situation, and Rochelle had to live through that. Mr. Charles says, if the US required employers to pay sick leave, how will insurance companies sell you short-term disability insurance? Good point. It's like Texas, point, counterpoint. On the other hand, we haven't profited off your misery enough yet. Okay, I didn't see. And I know, of course, he's being ironic. Jason Ray says, now this is his opinion, not mine. Carlson would like this kind of tactic. He says, Tucker Carlson is a trust fund terrorist who wouldn't last a day in a real meritocracy. Now, I didn't say it. Our viewer said it, but he is certainly a trust fund baby. And I forgot to tell you guys, he wrote in his yearbook that he was part of the Dan White Society. Dan White is the guy who murdered Harvey Milk and the mayor of San Francisco. So wow, he just says homophobic things about Pete Buttigieg today. Couldn't have seen that coming. So they are real horrible people. Barrel Age Millennial says, wouldn't you also want more foster parents? Otherwise the kids cost more to the system, private or not. Will they support gay foster parents? No. Yes, it costs the state more money, but the private companies that run the foster care agencies don't want more foster parents, so they would want to ban gay foster parents under the guise of family values, but so they could fill up more beds and charge the government more money. So this is the insanity of our system.
They actually don't care about the government spending money.
No, as long as it gets directed to them. Yeah, that's crony capitalism. Noelia Brunini wrote in, let us not forget another cost, not properly vetting staff for foster children. That's true too. And Pitchfork's Dragon says, are you saying these parents are coke heads? LOL. Yes, indeed. On the other hand, I'm a too strong head. We'll be back. TYT, Cenk, JR, and Sabrina with you, and also Colin and Amber HHH, because they just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. Now they're a bit of American heroes that help spread the actual news and positive change in the world. All right, JR Jackson.
More. There's a war being waged by conservatives that are against the teaching of our children things in the schools like the nasty things that happen with racism and slavery within our country, because they're afraid that sometimes those kids might begin to dislike the country because of the truth. Yes, that's what they've been saying. So anyway, this effort is claimed a new hostage in this effort to turn over real history, and that hostage is the Holocaust, if you can believe it or not. Let's go to some of the details from NBC News, who was reporting on this. So there was a top administrator at the Carroll Independent School District, and that's in Southlake, Texas. She advised teachers last week that if they have a book about the Holocaust in their classroom, they should also offer students access to a book from a quote, opposing perspective. Her name is Gina Petty, and she's the Carroll School District's Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. She made the comment Friday afternoon after a training session in which books teachers can have in the classroom libraries. So this training came 4 days after the same school board, responding to a parent's complaint, voted to reprimand a 4th grade teacher who kept an anti-racism book in her classroom. We're gonna get to all of those details behind that because that's appalling. But first, let's listen to this exchange that Gina Petty had with the teachers that were trying to figure out what we should do about these anti-books that they want us to implement in our classrooms, just in the libraries. Let's listen.
As you go through, just try to remember the concepts of 3979 and make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, that you have one that has opposing, that has other.
How do you oppose the Holocaust?
What? Believe me, that's come up.
So number the stars, which is
So the Carroll School District, she's the spokesperson, Karen Fitzgerald. She said that the district is trying to help these teachers figure out how to comply with this new law in Texas, where they're talking about making sure that you have the even 1 point counterpoint in Texas when it comes to teaching about history. This is what she had to say. Our district recognizes that all Texas teachers are in a precarious position with the latest legal requirements. So she pointed out the Texas law, how it requires teachers to provide balanced perspectives, not just during classroom instruction, but in the books that are available to students in class during their free time. Our purpose is to support our teachers in ensuring that they have all the professional development resources and materials that are needed. And also the politician that wrote the law, he was also asked about this by NBC News as well. And he says, that's not what the bill says, because these teachers and also these administrators are like, well, we gotta comply with the law, so we have to give you guys the opposite of the Holocaust, right? That's not what the bill says, is what he said in an interview with about their guidelines. I'm glad that we had this discussion to help elucidate what the bill says, because that's not what the bill says. Now, NBC News didn't elaborate further about what he did say the bill says, because nothing else was quoted from him about what the bill says. I have a feeling there wasn't much else you could say the bill says besides we need to even out anything that they say that talks about, this is what was in the bill, paraphrased. Anything that has controversial social issues that maybe might offend some of the parents and folks that are within the school district. So let's make sure we have something like that. So this particular administrator who brought up the Holocaust, she gave that as an example because the teachers were like, well, what do we do? Because there's been all these stipulations put in place for us to make sure we censor certain books. We don't know which books that they don't want us to teach because we're teachers. We're not trying to push their political agendas. And so now we found ourselves here.
Yeah, so this started with nonsense about critical race theory. Now, critical race theory is not taught in the schools, but conservative media lied about it repeatedly. And so parents became convinced that it was being taught. Not that they even know what it is. They have no idea what critical race theory is. And so they would go and they'd barge in and say, you can't teach this stuff. So Texas passed a law saying that you can't teach about racism and these other issues without giving the other side. And there was an actual teacher who was reprimanded for having a book about anti-racism. Now, what's the other side of anti-racism? Is it pro-racism? Is that what we're supposed to teach the kids? I don't know, Texas passed the law and it's a real law. So I don't know what they want them to teach. It isn't about critical race theory. That's a nuanced theory that's taught at law schools at the graduate level, right? So what they're actually saying is don't teach about racism. We don't want you to have freedom of speech. We don't want you to teach real history. We want you to teach, well, quite literally, whitewashed version of history, where America never did anything wrong, black people never suffered. And by the way, when you teach the wrong version of history, they get to say, well, look at black people, they're poorer than white people, it must be their fault. But wait a minute, how did they get there? It's like when the Irish first came in from the Great Potato Famine, and we took them in, and at the time we didn't ask questions. We were a great welcoming country. If you don't teach about the famine and you see all these poor Irish people, and you go, well, I guess the Irish are lazy and bums, and that's why they're all poor, and they deserved it. And you remember, this is a meritocracy. So if you're rich, you have merit, and if you're not rich, you don't have merit. But wait a minute, the history tells us how we got there. I don't care, teach pro-racism as the other point of view. So that's the insane law that Texas passed. That's why that's a real conversation about the Holocaust, because I don't even know that the person who brought it up is a bad person.
Yeah.
I think that they're genuinely confused. Well, if we teach the Holocaust, should we teach something that says what? What's the opposite? That the Holocaust didn't happen, or it did happen and it was a good thing? Because we're having real conversations about teaching pro-racism, or that racism doesn't exist. So I don't know what to teach in Alice in Wonderland, right? And it's a great question. I don't know what to tell those teachers. Because the Republicans in Texas, Charlie Sykes just said this on TV, and he's a conservative. Okay, he's a conservative, decades long conservative, talk show host in the middle of the country. He's like, the Texas Republicans are, he said, bat crap crazy, right? The actual version. That's because this is nuts. This is nuts to have this actual debate about whether we should teach whether the Holocaust happened or didn't happen, or whether it was a good thing or a bad thing in Texas. Sabrina.
I hope that if they do end up forcing these teachers to teach the opposite of the Holocaust, whatever that means, whether it's like Holocaust denial literature, I hope that, you know what, the teachers do end up showing that to the children, and they go line by line and they show them why it's wrong, how it's wrong, and how history will repeat itself if they actually take that seriously. Now, I hope that it doesn't end up coming to that, because why would you let these bigoted parents decide the school curriculum? That would be like passengers on a plane grouping up together, thinking that they could get to Florida faster, and so they overthrow the pilot. You know, like let the people do their jobs.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. See, because the thing is, the people doing their jobs is now become something where they're beginning to learn a different approach to how we should be learning about things. We got hidden so many real facts about our history as we grew up, and that's where our comfort zone has been. Being the powers that be, the comfort zone is that people didn't really know what's happened, or it's a sugar-coated version. Oh, there was this couple years of enslaved people, and a couple of them were treated badly, but you know what? We've gotten better. That's always the last part about this, not about how it has extended from that point on, and how from enslaved folks, it then went to people that were mistreated by their government, by the people, by authorities, by businesses, by doctors, by attorneys, to this day. So the system remains from where our beginnings were. So they don't want to teach the history, because then they'll have to learn about the present. And the present is where they're still controlling people and their belief systems and how they see things. That's why last summer's protests over police brutality was so angering for these folks. They're like, oh my God, there's people of all races out here now protesting something that we could just say it's those stupid black people who all got the same email and said to complain about police brutality and injustices in our justice system. Oh my God, now they're catching on. We have to cut off this information line as soon as possible. I mean, it's over the top. It's why it's crazy. It's why it doesn't make any sense. It's why it's cartoonish, because the people in power are like, oh my God, we have to stomp this out so badly that they've overstepped it so much that now we're talking about Holocaust, because that's the line that they don't want to cross. That's the line where we have learned about it from the beginning, how horrible that was, because it didn't happen here. It happened somewhere else. Oh my God, that bad guy Hitler did it. He's the only bad guy ever in history. We can talk about how bad and the horrors of that were, and we all know it. There's a few people who still deny it, that the horrors of that. But we can't talk about the horrors of our own country and our own suppression and our own, honestly, our own kind of genocide.
Yeah, I mean, Popovich, the coach of the Spurs the other day, said, we're celebrating Columbus Day in the year 2021. The guy was a genocidal maniac. It's like celebrating Adolf Hitler Day. Columbus would I mean, we've talked about this before, and it makes people uncomfortable, but it's part of history, it's a fact. You could say, hey, don't tell people facts, but that would be a curious thing to say. But he would demand gold of the natives. If they didn't deliver, well, there was barely any gold there. He'd gone to the wrong place. That's why he called them Indians. He thought he was in India. The guy's also a moron, by the way. Anyway, he would chop off their hands. And then he would make them wear it around their necks. And he said, oh, this place is great. The native women are so trusting, they're easy to rape.
How many of you guys learned that in class?
Okay, so that's a fact. That's a fact. And by the way, that is exactly what Texas passed the law about. Don't teach them that. Don't teach them. Christopher Columbus, wonderful white man who discovered America, and the natives here, the indigenous people, were inconveniently here, and obviously we had to butcher them. But shush, don't say that. Manifest destiny. Teach them that. God gave us the destiny to murder all of them and take over the whole country. But look, guys, then you also teach the great parts of America, the Marshall Plan. And yes, by the way, we're the guys who beat Hitler. And there's other great things that America did, and the Constitution in a lot of ways were wonderful. Of course, it was among the first democracies, if not the first one. You teach both. You teach both because that's what happened. That's why it's called history. And finally, look, I think that they think, the ones that are genuine, they're wrong, but they think, oh, if you're teaching about racism, you're teaching everybody that white people are evil. No, if we taught people that white people are evil, that would also be racist. We're teaching anti-racism, okay? We're saying do not judge based on race. Unfortunately, we did it in the past. Unfortunately, we still do it to this day. And let's all work together to fix it so that we have equality. That's what we're teaching. If you think equality is oppression, that's a different problem. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of the right wing thinks. Now I gotta be equal to you guys? I feel oppressed. And that's the heart of this problem, and that's why they've passed these insane laws that make no sense. All right, we gotta take another break here, guys. When we come back, Dave Rubin is going to scold Donald Trump? Wait, what? Okay, come right back. Let's go to Twitch. Kev Z gifted 6 subs. You guys are awesome. Yeah, make Brett and Brooke and Jordan eat those Pocky chips. Get the 6,200. Let's go. Progressive Scroll says 11 months of power. Been with us for 11 months. Desirable Darling says you guys are awesome. Love from the UK. Right back at you. Stranded on Earth says love TYT. You keep me sane. Thank you. Lucia Dragon says 9 months. Thank you for all the awesome. That's you guys are all wonderful. Thank you for saying those things. It's Soaz writes in, I've been following since 2013. Wow. When I immigrated to the US from France, thank you for keeping me informed with high quality fact and evidence-based reporting. You're also inspiring. Thank you guys. Again, look, without the members, we're nothing. We literally don't exist. So there was no Daddy Warbucks who just gifted us money, right? Oh, here, do some propaganda. No, we had to earn every nickel and dime. We were on the air from 2002, 2014 before we got any investment, let alone anything else. Those other guys get gifts, they don't get investments. And you guys kept us in business. So you're awesome, thank you for doing it. Thunderous Dragon said, if everything that is taught needs to include both sides, then I guess their health classes are going to have to teach promiscuity when they teach abstinence. I wonder how that would work out. That's a good question. Now remember guys, the safest way to have sex, of course, is not to have sex. So now we're gonna have to teach the opposite, bang like nuts. I mean, this could get really nuts in Texas. I don't know how you teach the opposite of everything. Now remember kids, 2 + 2 = 4. Or does it? Now we're bringing on a non-math expert to tell us that it equals 6. I don't know, it's Texas. Now let's go to Super Chat. R. Stone says, it's becoming clear that Republicans realize that they're killing their current voting electorate by not supporting COVID vaccines. So they now want to corrupt the future generation before they become age to vote. But that's very true. They are focused on the school boards, and the Koch brothers are, because they think that's where we indoctrinate them. If we let them have real history, then they won't listen to our propaganda, and we won't be able to get them all riled up on social issues and then get them to vote for our tax cuts. So that's how that game is played. Michael Hegner asks, do they also have to teach the opposite of the Constitution? How would you do it? Oh, easy, just talk to Donald Trump. You bring him in as a guest lecturer, he'll tell you the exact opposite of the Constitution. Mr. Charles says, same Texans that want to both sides of the Holocaust refuse to acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day. To which I say, of course. They're like, there are no indigenous people. You don't recognize them, don't recognize them. That's facts, we don't want facts. On TYT, Cenk, JR, and Sabrina with you guys. Also, Johnny Fredrickson and Jason Roberts, because they just signed up by hitting the join button below on YouTube. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being Young Turks members and helping us bring a little bit of actual news to Americans. I'm gonna read one last YouTube super chat here. HXC Mike wrote in, let's keep going down the both sides rabbit hole. Teach my kids to share. Why not teach them to steal? Recess. Why not Kid Fight Club? Oh, sorry, not supposed to talk about that. They actually did do that one. Yeah, seriously. Well, now, of course, everybody remember the golden rule, do as you would have. Now, on the other hand. All right, anyways, more news.
Dave Rubin, host of the Rubin Report, he's raising a few eyebrows because he had previous support of Donald Trump, but you never really know where this is gonna go now. He was speaking with Megyn Kelly about the potential run for Donald Trump in 2024 to take back the White House. And he had a couple of pointed words for him when she was asking about these poll numbers and how Donald Trump was running away with the potential primary that we would see if it was held today. First, let's listen to what he would have been telling Donald Trump to do instead of running for president again. Let's listen.
Oh, it's Trump's party, and that poll actually does not shock me. Who can still bring out the rallies? Who does the base still love? Who is still fighting the machine even though he's not on social media and he's just got these silly press releases and everything else? It's still Trump. What I would prefer to happen is that Trump acts as the advocate, keep doing the rallies, keep fighting the media, keep doing all the dirty work, be the bodyguard so that, say, a DeSantis, Tim Scott ticket maybe could get through. Let DeSantis, who I think is 43 years old, he's done an incredible job in Florida, he's willing to fight, but let Trump do the dirty work, let him take the hits from the media, let him draw the people to the rallies and go be the statesman, DeSantis. I know Florida wouldn't be happy to potentially lose him.
Trump. That doesn't sound like
it doesn't
Trump.
sound. I know, so hey, Don, if you watch Megyn Kelly's show, and I have no doubt that you do, my personal message to you is think about putting your ego in check for the first time in your life. Not because you're not right about a lot of this stuff, but because for the health of the country and for a true healing, not the way Biden said healing.
He went on about Biden, so that's why I stopped it there. But the idea, oh my God. Check your ego, Donald Trump. Check it. So I mean, hey, these are directed, pointed words, and I think maybe that's when the conversation decided to shift, because maybe that's how he really feels. Because no one tells Donald Trump to check his ego, first of all, but also we may try to think of some of the motivations behind this. We know a lot of Republicans, a lot of conservatives are tired of the way Donald Trump goes about things. Didn't like how he went about it as president. And he mentioned some of that too as well. But also, a couple days ago, Trump also sent out that directive to his people to not vote in 22 or 24 unless we get this thing figured out, which again is discouraging Republicans from voting. More Republicans are probably disappointed in that. And I'm gonna go to one more clip from a big time Republican donor, and that's where the money is. The money always talks. Let's see what this is Ken Griffin, and he was speaking about how he feels about Donald Trump running again in 24.
Would you support Donald Trump if he runs again for president in 2024?
I think it's time for America to move on. The 4 years under President Trump were so pointlessly divisive, it was not constructive for our country. And I never actually financially supported the president. He called my office, or not he, but one of his fundraisers did, one of his very senior fundraisers who I knew. And I opened with, I grew up in South Florida. And I found it incredibly offensive as attacks on the Hispanic community. Because in South Florida, when you grow up there, those are the people that build your houses. They serve your food at restaurants. And they were my teammates on the soccer field. And I was so appalled by his willingness to play identity politics that I was never willing to support him. Now, his economic policies, by and large, were pretty damn good for America. But his willingness to attack people on the basis of where they came from or their color of their skin was completely inappropriate. And we need to put that chapter in American history behind us.
Chapter in American history behind us. Check your ego, Donald Trump. Sit on the sidelines. Be the security guards. Where is this going?
Yeah, so if you're wondering what in the world is going on, so why does anybody even know or care about Dave Rubin? Because he's got 3 angles that he plays, right? I'm gay, but if you ever insult gay people, you bring me on your show and I pardon you. Okay, he just did that just yesterday on Newsmax. And one of the other guys on there used the F word about gay people and he sat there, yeah. Okay, the smaller one is if you're anti-Semitic, he'll probably let you off the hook on that too, but they don't go to that very often. Because the right wing plays identity politics. So they need somebody from each race and ethnicity, et cetera, to come on and say, oh, no, you can say anything you want about us. Great, where's my check? Okay, now, but the third one is, well, I used to be on the Young Turks, I used to be progressive, I used to be a Democrat, and I'll tell you, you guys are right-wingers. Oh, these Democrats are the worst, right? I know, I am one. I voted for Kerry and Obama, okay? Back when I was getting a paycheck from TYT, I don't know when he was lying. I don't know if he was lying here, if he's lying now, it doesn't really matter. He has no moral core, right? So that's his job. So then why he supported Trump completely, bragged about how he voted for him in 2020, the so-called Democrat, classical liberal or whatever the hell he calls himself, whatever scam he's running. So why is he saying this about Trump now? That's a good question. Now here's the answer. In the right-wing circles, there are different folks who make money in different ways. So for example, as far as I can tell, I don't know their internal workings, but where you can see publicly in the reporting on them, it looks like Steven Crowder makes money in a normal way. He has a popular YouTube channel. I don't like it. I don't agree with it, but it's popular and he makes money through ads, et cetera, that like everybody else does, right? On the other hand, Dennis Prager is funded almost completely by right-wing billionaires. So there's reporting on that. He gets $20 to $25 million as a gift, not an investment, gift. Here, Dennis Prager, do propaganda for us. Tell everybody how great tax cuts are for the rich. Oh yeah, tax cuts for the rich are great. Black people are terrible, yay, right? So Rubin is closer to the Prager camp. You look at his numbers, I know exactly what those numbers indicate. And he doesn't make anywhere near the money he would need to make to buy the, I think the $5 million house or whatever the hell he bought. It doesn't matter, it's not real. He's getting money to do propaganda. So these guys are now saying, go out there and tell people, we're done with Donald Trump. Have him be a glorified cheerleader, but the bankers have decided, the people who fund Dave Rubin have decided, it's time to move along, Donald. I don't think he's gonna take their advice. Sabrina.
It's not often that I find myself agreeing with Trump or ever, but if he's out there telling Republicans not to vote, you know what? Go right ahead, go for it. And I think that that's what's gonna happen over him cheerleading for anybody else. I don't know what Ruben is thinking. It's like he didn't see Trump the last 4 years. Yeah, he is not going to cheerlead for anybody else. Hopefully we don't get a DeSantis ticket like he's predicting. Yeah, I'm not sure where he's getting any of that from, but we'll see what happens with Trump.
It's probably, as far as any conservative that's looking to continue the Trumpian way, it's a good plan. Yeah, have him still be the clown on the side that makes people laugh, and then have the DeSantis who's younger run with a black guy. And then, we have this diversity ticket, and DeSantis is the clone of Trump, a younger one who isn't 80 years old almost. So it's not even a bad plan. It's what probably many conservatives want to happen. They just can't say it because Donald Trump will take your head off, and everyone else around him will go, yep, let's watch that head roll, because we know how they are. So it's a little bit of a risk to say something like that until you know that that's beginning to be the thing that's going downhill now. That being the strategy.
Guys, what is Dave Rubin thinking? The answer is always the same, nothing. He has no independent thought. He thinks whatever his donors tell him to think. So if he's out there talking against Trump, it's a guarantee that one of his funders told him to say that. There's no way that Dave Rubin is gonna go out there and be like, you know what? I'm ready to lose whatever little audience I have. I think Donald Trump should go back to being the court jester and be our security guard and keep his ego in check, okay? And do all the dirty work, but get none of the credit. First of all, I was about to say even Dave Rubin isn't that dumb to think that Trump would do that, but I'm not positive, okay? But he certainly wouldn't naturally do that unless someone told him to do it, because he's potentially sacrificing his own audience. So that means the bankers are desperate to get rid of Trump. They created a Frankenstein, and he's now running amok. He's telling people not to vote for Republicans. Republicans get them tax cuts. He's trying to undermine democracy. They got a good thing going. Now there's an actual populist wing of the Republican Party going, hey, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't work for big business. Maybe our Mitch McConnell and other corporate Republicans are corrupt. Now that is a silver lining right there. That's actually true, right? There, I'm giving some right wingers credit. You've noticed, yes, it's the corruption, stupid, right? And I say that to Democrats all the time. So the Dave Rubins of the world, paid by the rich folks, don't like you finding that out. Put that populist genie back in a bottle, everybody go back to working for the bankers.
There's more energy coming out for that. Like as information continues to flow through, there's more information and access to the way people see things happening. And you can still keep your conservative values. You can still wish that the government spent less. It doesn't under the people that you've elected, but maybe you can have a little bit closer to that reality if you actually ask and demand as citizens to get back what you deserve, because we pay into this, we own this. It's weird how we've detached ourselves from this, and suddenly conservatives are supposed to be the ones to be like, yeah, sure, government, just run roughshod over us and just continue to do what you want, but under the guise of saying it's only Democrats that want the government to run over us. The control that many people want the government to run over us with, under this thought of conservatism, just doesn't make any sense. And they're beginning to wake up. They got to find a new route. And even that guy with Ken Griffin, he had to mention as an aside, but his economic policies were great for America. That's always the go-to. That is the last part. As long as a Republican can continue to guarantee their money to come back into their pockets, he's still in good standing. I mean, he's a little crazy. He's off the rails. We have to deal with him. But as long as he comes back to giving us the money, we'll deal with him. But now they're tired. Oh my God, they're so tired of having to defend him, of having to go to parties and seeing his face there, or having people ask him, hey, how'd you support Trump for this long? And they gotta go, I kind of don't like him. Okay. It's hard.
Guys, you'll be able to tell if we're right or wrong. That's why we make predictions, etc. on the show, right? If you see now more politicians, because they're the other people like Prager and Rubin who are owned on the media, and almost all the Republican politicians are owned by the donors, the bankers, etc. If you see more and more of them coming out and saying, Donald Trump, he's great, he's wonderful, of course, the standard ass kissing, but maybe he should, let someone else do and be the elder statesman. You're gonna see that talking point more and more. And when you see it, then you'll be able to say, oh, they were right. The donors and the bankers are sending all of their lackeys to tell Trump, go get off the stage, right? And let me tell the bankers this. Don't waste your money on that. Ain't never gonna happen. Or you know what? Go ahead and waste your money. Okay, but it's not gonna happen. He's never gonna listen to that. All right, we're out of time. Bonus episode is amazing. We're gonna talk about a restaurant that decided, I'm gonna show Biden and the Democrats. Well, did he? Okay, TYT.com/join. Members, we'll see you there in a minute.
Old school was pitched to me from Jake. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong, I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck.
But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the f, you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.